What do you mean by that, Ray? In it. Are we irrevocably in it, or are we irrevocably out of it? Is it more important to be in it, or more important to be out of it? I mean, just what is it?
I was thinking, since we have all three of us, at first I was going to just get an interview of you, so it would be just you, and then I figured since all three of us are here, we'll take advantage of that. And I wanted to revisit that talk we just had earlier about prior, like you said, in the last year and a half, you were reading Nisargadatta. If you could just kind of go into that.
Yes, well, prior to Nisargadatta was my own history. At the age of 40, about 38 years ago, I had a hard look at reality and discovered, shockingly, that who I really am has nothing to do with my past or future, and everything to do with what was in my perceptual fields. And my conclusion was, I am everything within my perceptual fields. And then, an hour later, they called me at the hospital for an emergency. I said, damn, this is not, what is going on here? You know I'm everything within my perceptual fields, but is this, am I the hospital calling me in the middle of my relaxed Sunday afternoon? And so I thought at that point, well, yeah, so I know I'm everything. And what's going on? Why is life such a pain in the ass still, being a doctor, being on call and all of that stuff? And so I explored alternatives, TM, meditations of various types, Zen, all the different types of Buddhism and Christianity, and was left with nothing specific that I could hold on to. And about 2 years ago, I stumbled onto Nisargadatta, and for some reason, one evening, while I was in the bathroom, I grokked. I flashed on what Nisargadatta was talking about, which was prior to any thoughts about Nisargadatta, prior to any thoughts about anything, prior to any thoughts about enlightenment, prior to any thoughts about celebrating enlightenment. So now, although I knew that here and now is all there is, I had not quite established my identity as everything that is in this here and now moment. And what Nisargadatta did for me was to locate me, to locate the sentience that I am prior to any thought I might have about it, which was a great relief. And I've been lording it over the other participants in my incarnation ever since. Thank you for the opportunity to lord it over you and you.
Anytime.
Is that here? Is that happening right now? That awareness or that same scene?
That place is happening right now, but it's simple because it never happened anywhere else. It's totally what we've bathed in and have been bathed in forever. Mm-hmm. And the good news is that it's forever, which means we'll probably be having this conversation in several incarnations in the future. Hopefully by then it'll be more real in our lives. Right now it takes 2 cups of coffee to get here.
But that
he doesn't really agree, he's just being compliant. Thank you, John.
Yes, I am.
When you say forever, are you including these particular forms in forever?
That would be fun. Especially as you keep changing color. Forms versus no forms is irrelevant. Presence. Even presence versus no presence is irrelevant, since who we are is that vastness in which presence and non-presence show up. Yin and yang show up. Says here in fine print. But that's the delightful realization. The inertia is to identify with the game. My thoughts currently is that the game is cool. I enjoy the game much more now that I have a permanent context in which it's happening. I used to think that past and future and history meant something. And now I realize that it has meaning only in as much as it can contribute to what's going on right now. To what's going on in the matrix of this vastness in which we managed to show up in.
So now I stopped paying attention to what you were saying, because when I start to hear things like the game and the matrix, I tune out. So I apologize for that.
You should.
I should tune out or apologize?
Both.
Thank you, thank you.
Let me just see something. Looks like it's still recording. So, is there any ongoing work that needs to be done for you?
Yes. Yeah, the work is differentiating myself from the isness of it all. Differentiating John Nasse from what John Nasse is in the middle of. Thinking that differentiating my inclination to behave as this historical identity, psychiatrist, a person in Ojai, a lover of coffee, living on Aliso Street, differentiating myself from all of that and reawakening as a presence in which this show that we're dancing in is happening right now. And which is an ongoing process and not so undelightful. It's not like taking a shower after you've been dipped in tar at all. You know?
Are you familiar with this experience?
It's like taking a shower with a good-looking lady, which is my past. You know, I used to resent my past. Now it's a delightful friend that shows up.
You used to be a good-looking lady?
In your dreams, baby. In your dreams. As we awaken, as I awaken, as I let go of the significance of this individual historical being, it becomes more and more like an opportunity. My favorite analogy is to dance. The same feeling I get from dancing and is celebrating being in the body, celebrating my phone, celebrating the phone calls I get.
Keep talking. We'll use it.
But in other words, quite literally, the Maharishi always talks about you meditate your ass off and you can celebrate life. He's always talked about celebrating life, celebrating life. And this is kind of what it literally is. You celebrate letting go of, just like the phone. You look at it, you say, oh, there's the past, screaming in my ear, you know, and just shut it off. Unless it has relevance. In the old days, I'd interrupt the session in order to make some critical, medical, astounding judgment with somebody in the airways somewhere that doesn't really exist. Now I just can let go of it and feel calm about it, more or less. More or less. Depends on whether you have your malpractice insurance paid up or not.
It's always.
You went to, you said a couple Krishnamurti talks? When he
Yes.
was back when he was alive?
Yes.
What was that like?
Boring. Boring and delightful because I was seeing somebody that the world had been applauding for a long, long time. And I was getting to see him before he went on to other realms. And I went twice. And it was wonderful listening to the man, but more wonderful being in the crowd of acolytes, in the crowd of people who were interested in what I was interested in at the time, which was dealing with this implausible situation where I was in a world that I didn't create and somehow that I had to deal with. So it was me against the manifest universe. And there was a sense of never being able to be complete. And I was hoping that going to somebody like Krishnamurti, who would make me one with it all, or what have you. What I've come to discover is that we are already one with the context that we're appearing in. The trick has been in creating the individuality, the separateness of the human condition, to develop a personal history that we could use to dance in the oneness whom we already are.
So,
Yeah?
Good enough for me.
if I didn't have the use of my brain right now, I wouldn't have a clue as to what any of what you're saying means. It would just be sounds. Maybe I would not even hear the sounds. So, how much of this presence and beingness really needs any language to it?
No, it needs no language. But it's helpful in people who are identified with their thought processes. Now, ultimately, your brain is not located in your head. It is the universe manifesting as you. So the intelligence of the universe is manifesting through you. You call it your brain, you think your intelligence is coming from your brain. It's not. It's coming from the manifest universe. I don't see your brain anywhere. Yeah, so, and my thought was, what if I'm just displaying some weird form of autoeroticism? What is this? Has nothing to do with anything. And the breakthrough was in discovering that the process is what is producing me. I'm not producing the process is producing me in order to dance, in order to play. The manifest consciousness, or whatever it is, the being that decides to create this phenomenon of individuality, did so in order to dance. But it has to create identification in space and time in order to create a separation. Separate you from me, from John, so that we can play. If you don't have an opponent, you don't have somebody you dance with, they can be, lead to a very boring manifestation. That's what they call solipsisms, when you realize that who you are is everything. The mistake is in not seeing that who everything is you. The other way around. That's the breakthrough. But that takes some clearing of the decks.
Aye, sir.
So there's no sense of what I would call a final liberation from the whole game, the whole manifested.
Definitely, I definitely very demarcated for me, very demarcated. I'm
What's that
I'm
mean?
very marked,
Okay,
delineated.
thank you.
I'm a relatively bright guy, not too smart so I get lost in my own brain, but smart enough to evaluate what was going on. And it was only when I broke through to the fallaciousness of identifying with my historical identity that I realized who I was. And who I was that has no boundaries and is not identifiable historically. My brain is like a book on a table, and it's what we use and to participate in the world and to participate in the phenomenon of individuality as opposed to being lost in the spaghetti sauce of the universe.
Yeah, I follow what you're saying. Isn't that all on one level just mental concepts?
Totally. These are concepts that are manifesting through our brains, but it's the universe that is manifesting through our brains. The person who's talking to you now is the universe. It has no location. It is a presence. It is a presence that is interested in participating in the phenomenon of being separate from itself. So you have an experience of being separate from the spaghetti. I was just thinking another meatball of spaghetti. Let's play. That couldn't happen if there are no meatballs. There's got to be separation.
This is a standard thing that I'm about to say that, it's
I am that's behind you, so don't worry.
I don't necessarily like it when people pull this out of their hat, but I feel compelled to say it. Like, where is all of that in deep sleep? Like, what universe,
What deep sleep? What do you know about deep sleep? Huh? Wise ass.
Big shot.
Excellent.
Hey, deep sleep, prove it to me. I know, I've never seen it. Yay! Finally! It was revealed. Well, I had friends in TM used to say they woke up while they were sleeping, and they had a sense of there-ness. They're just there. And when they tried to move their body, they couldn't move their body. And then in order to move their body, they said they had to get thick. In other words, which is a beautiful description of what happens to the vastness, to the void. In order to have manifestation, it has to get thick. It's like you're making whipped cream. There's nothing there, but if you keep stirring enough, you'll get a whipped cream. Well, it's the same with the universe. You whip around the universe enough with your incarnation, it gets thick, and you have a manifestation.
Okay. I don't know what the word universe indicates.
The manifestation.
Where is the
Versus the
manifestation in
non-manifestation.
deep sleep?
The manifestation in deep sleep is, I don't know what a manifestation is. You are the manifestation. You're manifesting deep sleep. Deep sleep has no manifestation unless you're there. Or somebody else.
The reason I'm parroting Ramana's teaching of deep sleep is my approach is that liberation is to be in
Awake.
deep sleep while awake.
Yes.
And anything anyone else has to say other than that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I know what it's like when the mind or the identity is asleep, but consciousness is awake.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that seems to be real when we're talking about things in this way. So when you talk about universe, manifestation, game, I don't have a reference point anymore as to how that has any meaning.
Yeah, and I agree. I've been there with LSD. Definitely, I went to the beginning of all time, and who I was the cosmic hum. And there was no sense of individuality. There was no sense of it not being okay. There's no sense of it being great. It was just there, kind of and then I would oscillate back into reality and back and forth. And in the process of doing that, I had a direct experience of being Shiva, being everything, totally everything, and coming back into coning down into myself, and then going back through Shiva and back into quote-unquote deep sleep where there was nothing. It wasn't bad, it wasn't good. But I decided to come back into my life because I thought that I would be a vegetable and my parents would have to take care of me for the rest of my life, and I was really embarrassed about that. Not while I was in the absolute or in the cosmic hum, but when I was halfway to being the individual.